communities. I'm going to start. I also just want to say that I'm so thrilled to see so many people here. There's hundreds of folks in the crowd. And that this rally builds on the momentum of many scientist-led efforts over the last weeks, from petitions to open letters we are getting out of our labs and into the streets. And you're going to see more of us over the coming months and years. So thank you for coming together. Is Michael Mann here? Okay, he will be here soon. I'm going to introduce our first speaker, Dr. Naomi Oreskes. She's a professor of the history of science at Harvard University, and she can tell us a lot about decades of fossil fuel misinformation and disinformation campaigns that have in large part got us to this place. So please welcome Naomi Oreskes.
Well, it's incredible to be here with all of you today. And I have to say, I've given hundreds and hundreds of talks to thousands and thousands of people, and I'm much more nervous. Okay, I'm much more nervous today than I normally am when I talk in public, because the bottom line is, we don't want to be here. None of us want to be here. We want to be in our labs, we want to be in the field, we want to be with our students, we want to be doing the work that we were trained and educated and raised to do, which is science. It's the work of understanding the natural world, understanding how this beautiful, amazing, and complicated world works, and using that information to make the world a better place for all of us, to make it safe, and to protect the natural environment that God or creation or the universe gave us. That's what we want to do, but we are at a moment in time, a moment in history, where we have to do something else as well, and that's stand up and be counted. This is a frightening moment. We have seen in the last few weeks how the reins of the federal government are being handed over to the fossil fuel industry. We are looking at the creation of an American oligarchy run by the very people who have created the situation that is now threatening our own health, our own well-being, and our own prosperity. And we have to get that message out. We have to stand up, and we have to say that as scientists, it's not enough just to do our science. We have to get out and explain to people why this science matters to them, to their lives, to their jobs, to their communities, to their health and well-being, and to their prosperity, because climate change is going to cost every American a lot of money. And ExxonMobil is going to go to the Russian Arctic and make trillions, and we, the American people, are going to be picking up the pieces and paying the bill. And that's not okay. So, what I want to say to everyone who's here today, it's absolutely fantastic you're here, but it's just the first step. As someone just said, don't get depressed, don't get upset, get organized, get to work. We have work to do. I see that Citizens Climate Lobby are here. They are amazing, on the ground, grassroots, fighting for a price on carbon. The single most important thing we can do, because this is a difficult, complicated issue, but the single most important thing we can do is to put a price on carbon so we all pay the true cost of fossil fuels. And Citizens Climate Lobby is out there working in every state of this union, mobilizing Republicans, Democrats, and independents to work for that. Please join Citizens Climate Lobby, or if you don't want to join them, join 350.org, join Mothers Out Front, join the Voter Participation Project, but join something. If we work together, we can change this. We can turn this great battleship of our country around. But it means every one of us has to get to work. A lot of us have been a little bit complacent. A lot of us, especially scientists, have thought it's not our job, it's someone else's job. But it is our job. It's all of our jobs. So please, pick an organization of your choice. All the last couple weeks I've been tweeting about all kinds of great organizations. Donate time, donate money, but do something. Don't get depressed, get to work. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Naomi. Speaking of tweeting, I want to let you guys know that we're using hashtag AGU 2016 and hashtag Stand Up for Science. This is happening on the occasion of the AGU Fall Meeting. The AGU is the world's largest association of Earth scientists, and this is the largest convening of climate scientists since climate deniers gained unprecedented power. There's 26,000 scientists here, and we're making our voices heard. Peter Frumhoff from the Union of Concerned Scientists is going to speak next.
Thank you so much. What a beautiful crowd this is. Thank you all for coming out today. I know you're here because you understand just how essential science and evidence is to our democracy. Science and evidence unfettered by political or corporate interference. Science and evidence that has for decades served as the bedrock for the development of public policies, from the Clean Air Act to the Clean Water Act, to the Endangered Species Act, and we can go on, to the Paris Agreement on climate change, that are designed to protect public health and the environment. And science and evidence that I know you all get is at risk of being deeply interfered with in the context of this incoming administration. I know you share the fear that I have, that so many of us have, that science and evidence is at risk of being ignored, disparaged, and disregarded. We see appointments by the President-elect to the Environmental Protection Agency of a man, Scott Pruitt, who actively disparages climate science. We see the appointment, the nomination of Rex Tillerson, the CEO of ExxonMobil, to the Secretary of State, a man who has led a company that has for decades disinformed on climate science in order to avoid regulation. And we see the President-elect himself, President-elect Trump, just on Sunday say that nobody knows if climate change is real. Science and evidence is at risk, and it's up to us to ensure that it's protected, and that federal scientists doing their work are protected, and that we hold the incoming administration accountable for protecting science and maintaining science-based policies. It really is up to us. So what can we do? Well, we do have to fight back. We do have to watchdog, and there are a lot of different things you can do, a lot of organizations you can join. I want to just tell you a few things about the Union of Concerned Scientists and the things that we're doing. We have an open letter to the Trump administration and the incoming Congress, calling on them to stand up for science and maintain science-based policies to protect federal scientists. It's been signed by about 3,000 scientists, Nobel laureates, to scientists across the country, every state in the Union. If you're a scientist, we call on you to join us to sign that statement. I've been in conversations with federal scientists over the past month, since the election, across agencies who are deeply discouraged about their own well-being, their own ability to do their science. We've just seen a questionnaire, deeply intrusive, go into the Department of Energy, calling on the Department of Energy to name individual scientists who've been working on climate change in the DOE. We need to stand up to that kind of offensive McCarthyite actions. I'm very pleased to have learned today that the Obama administration, still in power, that the Department of Energy has refused to turn over names. Standing up for science, as we all need to do. Many federal scientists I've talked with have talked about polishing up their resumes, looking for something else to do, looking for ways to duck and cover. It's a totally understandable response, but it's not the right response. We need scientists in federal agencies and across the country to keep doing their work and to let them know we have their backs. And UCS in particular is going to work to make sure that we're watchdogging misinformation in this administration. This is a movie that we've seen in part before during the George W. Bush administration. This may be the opening scenes of what might be a sequel on steroids. We just don't know yet. But we've got to be paying attention. We've got to be holding the administration accountable. And for example, UCS is going to be working to establish a portal by which scientists anonymously and confidentially working in federal agencies can report misinformation to us, and we can help forestall the worst outcomes of efforts to derail scientific integrity. So I invite you to join with us, join with any organization that's standing up for science, find ways in your own communities, in your own states, across the country, to ensure that science and evidence is not dismissed, disparaged, or ignored in the next hopefully only 4 years. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Peter. Our next speaker is Leila Salazar, the Executive Director of Amazon Watch.
Hi everyone, thank you so much for being out here to stand up for science and to stand up for our communities, because that is really what we're out here for. We're out here to stand behind the truth. We're not denying the truth. The science is real. Climate change is real. Just ask any of the communities who are on the front lines. Just ask anyone who's out there at Standing Rock. Just ask anyone who is in Flint, Michigan. Ask anyone who is out there in Richmond, California, or El Segundo, California, where the Chevron refinery spews toxics every day. Climate change is real. It's human-induced. We can't go back. So what we need to do is keep fossil fuels in the ground. And the scientists have told us this. The scientists have said, in order to avert climate chaos, we have to keep at least 80% of fossil fuels in the ground. Indigenous people that we work with across the Amazon agree, and they've been doing that. For over 25 years, we've seen Indigenous people across the Amazon keep oil companies, keep militaries, keep governments out of their territories. I particularly think of the people, the very brave, courageous, heroic people that I have the honor to work with from Sarayaku. It's a Quechua people from Sarayaku in the heart of the Ecuadorian Amazon. They have kept oil companies off their land for nearly 30 years. And they did this before they knew that all the scientific evidence, before the scientists had confirmed that we need to keep 80% of the fossil fuels in the ground. The point of this is to say that Indigenous people have the knowledge too. And what gives me hope right now is that the scientific knowledge and the Indigenous knowledge is coming together. And it has been coming together. I have had the honor to travel to many international climate conferences with Indigenous leaders. And as we come together with climate leaders and climate scientists from around the world, we're actually saying the same thing. And yes, of course, it bums us out to think that this new elected government could take that all away. But we're not going to let them take that away, right? We need to stand with those who are defending our water, those who are defending our rainforests, those who are defending our communities, from Standing Rock to Sarayaku. Recently, I was with Patricia Walinga, Nina Walinga, and Aura Tegria from Colombia at the IUCN. And we were promoting for the protection of sacred areas like the rainforests, the most biological place on the planet, biologically diverse place on the planet. And one of the things that we kept repeating and I kept hearing and people kept cheering about was that Indigenous people are 4% of the population. Their lands are 20% of the land on Earth. But within that land, there's 80% of the biological diversity on this planet we call Earth. So I hold on to that, and know that we are going on the right path to stand with science, to stand with Indigenous and frontline communities who are defending our water, who are defending our rainforests, who are defending our communities for all of us. So I want to actually lead us in a chant, because that's what we do. Our communities are under attack. What do? You say stand up, fight back. Our communities are under attack. What do? Stand up, fight back. Science and research is under attack. What do? Stand up, fight back. Science and research is under attack. What do? Stand up, fight back. Yes, let's keep fossil fuels in the ground. Let's stand up.
Thank you, Layla. Now we're going to hear from David Karabelnikov. He's Aleut, an Alaska native, and organizer with Idle No More and Digital Smoke Signals.
I'm also recently applied to a PhD candidacy at UC Berkeley, so if there's anyone on the admission committee here, I hope you favorably are impressed by this talk. I was wondering when I might get one, but we were working hard, and that group studies energy and climate from an interdisciplinary perspective. I think it's the best research group to be able to pursue looking at the 12 and more, almost 100 imminently threatened communities in Alaska that have to relocate from climate change due to coastal erosion, thawing permafrost, and the direct results of human anthropomorphized induced climate change. And yet no federal agency wants to take lead on this. No federal agency feels it's their responsibility to find new site locations for communities that are being displaced. And some of these communities have been in this situation for 30, 40 years, even longer. Since some since the 70s have been saying we need to relocate. It's not safe for us, where the US government came and built boarding schools at the easiest location for a barge to drop off building materials to start colonizing the minds of indigenous people and taking away the language and the cultures, which also has basis in indigenous science. And if we go back to what we call like the original instructions, which is now talked about in science terminology as sustainability, if you break the original instructions, if you desecrate the sacred systems of life that support life, you are being unsustainable. And it is simply the same thing using different terminology, using slightly different epistemologies, but the result is the same, is that if we destroy our life support systems here, and we are the only generation so far yet to be existing in humanity that has the responsibility to stand up and say, no, we will give a sustainable a life, an earth that can carry on for future generations to the next generations. If we fail in doing that, how selfish will we be? We will be the most selfish generation ever. And that is a legacy I do not want to leave. And so I'm happy to be here. I want to recount a very short story of how indigenous knowledge and science, I believe, are compatible and can work together. And that is in our creation story of the Unungan people. The humans were not humans in the beginning. We were cormorants. We were something like a mythical bird. We were flying around in the heavens, and we saw the volcanoes erupting that were making the Aleutian Islands that were going to be our part of creation. And we saw the most beautiful creature, the Aleut woman, was there at the mouth of the volcano, and we flew up to the Creator and pled with him and begged with him, please make us to be with her. He says, I can only do it for eternity. He's like, that's all that we want. We want to be with her forever. And so as we came out of the heavens, we came out in our ikiaks, which is our kayaks, our skin boats. They were spiritual transdimensional vessels. Those boats, only a handful of people know how to make them today. There is a nice artifact that you can see at UC Berkeley's Hearst Museum. It was taken from Atka in 1960s without permission. I just was there doing a culture camp. They weren't happy about it. But I want to see that now that digital fabrication has advanced to where we can take biometric measurements, our arms, how long they are, how they proportionally represent us to that boat, and that we can make, digitally fabricated, traditional boats in the way that our ancestors did. And build a relationship both with cutting edge technology and with traditional and indigenous knowledge. And I think that is the way forward. And I would hope that the Maori have made a good example of having a goal of 1,000 PhDs. So I would hope to all the scientists here that you find scholarships, you find indigenous people to mentor and educate up to the sciences through terminal degrees, so that we can be creating the new wave of knowledge to make sure that this type of catastrophe never happens again on the political and social systems here.
Our next speaker is Andres Soto, a community organizer with Communities for a Better Environment.
Good afternoon, everybody, and it's really a pleasure to be here with all the scientists, particularly coming from Communities for a Better Environment. I'm the Richmond organizer, and we utilize what is called the triad model. We combine community organizing with science and with lawyers, and that's how we go about protecting the health and safety of people in the frontline communities. That's how we go about protecting the workers who work in industries that are producing the chemicals that are killing us and destroying the planet. And so, as I was thinking about this gathering, a couple things came to mind. First is the politicization of science is nothing new. As long as there's been science, there's been politicization. Maybe they came up together. But it reminded me of the fact that back in the 1990s, I was working on the issue of gun control, where we were having, more than 30,000 people a year die from firearms. And the CDC was funding research, injury prevention research centers. One was over here at SF General through the Trauma Foundation. And we produced a document, a 6-page document that just told the facts about gun violence and women. Within 2 weeks, a Republican congressman was waving it around in front of a committee, and the Congress, the Republican-controlled Congress under Newt Gingrich, told the CDC, either you stop doing research on gun death and injury, or you will have your entire injury prevention budget eliminated. And guess what they did? They quit researching guns. And to this date, today, there is no national database on gun death and injury because of the politicization of science. And we know that that's what's going to be happening with this new administration. And just as Layla was suggesting, I think one of the things I want to recommend, because growing up a Chicano in Richmond, California, not only where we have Chevron, but we had police violence because the culture of suppression is part of the strategy of industry when they want to get away with polluting communities like Richmond. They want us fighting each other rather than uniting and targeting them. Well, we came back with an idea called the Richmond Progressive Alliance. And we've taken over the city council. This is the last election. We now have 5 out of 7 council members. And we're going to do great things. It took us 14 years to do it. But we're doing it from the grassroots up. But where we started at, it started with police violence. And me and my family and a lot of other Chicanos on Cinco de Mayo were the victims of Richmond police violence in 2002. Our thought was resistance. We are a resistance movement. And that's what I want all of you to think about. And so I want you to all shout one time. Resistance. Ready? Resistance. Now, I want you to shout it 3 times in a row, because that's going to make you feel good, and that's what you're going to need to do to take on this fight during the Trump administration. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Resistance! 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 Thank you very much.
We have just a couple more speakers. I'm going to introduce Dr. Michael Mann. He's a climate scientist and the director of the Earth Systems Science Center at Penn State University.
Well, I have to say, when I hear that expression, the Trump administration, I myself find myself in a bit of denial, as do many of us, I think. And to hear that there has been a politicization of science, I'm shocked to learn that that's the case. Well, my co-author Tom Tolles and I stated in our recent book, The Madhouse Effect, which was published just prior to the election, the following: if we are to avert the worst impacts of climate change, We will have to act in the next few years. We will need both the President and Congress on board if we are going to work with other nations of the world to achieve the sorts of carbon reductions necessary to achieve this goal. Well, an election happened since then, and while the result was not the one many of us would have liked to see, the battle goes on. It must go on. Now more than ever, it is critical that scientists step forward and make their voices heard, not just for the sake of scientific research, but for the sake of the entire planet. Quoting from the very end of the book. So we have our work before us, we have our task, we have the oceans to preserve, we have the rainforests to protect, we have farmlands and coasts to defend, we have the panoply of spectacular species with which we evolved to shepherd. This is our home, it's time to start acting like it. Thank you.
Next we have Kim Cobb, who's a professor in the School of Earth and Atmospheric Sciences at Georgia Institute of Technology.
Thanks a lot. It is an honor to be here. I find it an unlikely spot. If you told me I'd be here 5 years ago, I wouldn't have believed you. I don't think any of us believed we would actually be standing here talking about our planet in the ways that we are today 4 years ago. This has been a very humbling year for climate scientists. We have watched the temperatures soar to new heights. It's been a very tough year for me personally, having scuba dived on the reef in the far reaches of the tropical Pacific and watching 85% of that reef die between one of my trips and the next over 6 months. A humbling and gravely disturbing experience to go through. As I was last on my research expedition last month, I got the news while I was in the field. That's for you scientists out there. I was scuba diving the tropical Pacific when it went down. Wow. Now, I didn't have much wherewithal at the time, definitely didn't have the bandwidth to process that. Once my samples got back to my lab safely, and the people that I was in charge of got back to my lab safely a couple weeks later, it sunk in. And it was a shock. It struck me to my core. It was an unthinkable thing that had happened when I was away. And it's been difficult to recover from that, and yet the nightmare continues. And it keeps getting worse every day. And yet, how many people do we have in here from AGU? We probably have several hundred, and I thank you so much for being here. Thank you. Thank you. But how many thousands of our peers are still in poster halls and lunches with their buddies, prepping talks in their hotel rooms? Too many. We have for too long as scientists rested on the assumption that by providing indisputable facts and great data that we are providing enough of an attack to counter the forces against science. And obviously that strategy has failed miserably. What we need right now is all of the scientists who care so deeply about their work, about facts and data and truth, to shake off the fear that holds them back from engaging in this space. Not thinking about it as a political problem, but thinking about it in defense of science. Thank you. So I say, whatever is holding you back, if you're a scientist, what are you waiting for? What is the nightmare scenario that will get you out of your hotel rooms, out of Moscone South, out of those nice lunch chairs with your buddies? What will have to happen, folks? Because it's happening. It's time. It's past time. Please join us. Please, let's let our voices speak together. If we do speak together, I'm confident we can change the course of history. Thank you.
So we have a very special final speaker. I want to introduce James Coleman, who's a student at South San Francisco High School and a fellow with the Alliance for Climate Education. And he's going to give you a message from and for the future.
Hello. As a current senior in high school, I'm proud to say that I am an aspiring scientist and climate activist. We all have lines we draw that once crossed, we cannot stay silent any longer. For me, it was learning about the protests at Standing Rock, where thousands of indigenous peoples and their allies have gathered to defend their sole source of water from oil contamination. In response to peaceful demonstrations by water protectors, oil pipeline militia and police have retaliated with pepper spray, rubber bullets, mace, and water hoses. These are human rights violations happening right before our eyes. When I found out about Standing Rock, I knew I couldn't be silent any longer. I'm not a politician, I'm not a public speaker, I'm not even a high school graduate yet. But I am a human being whose moral line has been drawn and breached. And through this, I have been called to action. I joined the Alliance for Climate Education as a fellow in August, and here I am today, speaking out in front of a crowd for the very first time, nervous but ever determined to push for climate justice. What I'm saying is this: what is your line? Is it when our neighbors' access to clean water is under threat? Is it when our children can no longer experience the ecological beauty that we take for granted today? Is it when the research you've conducted is disregarded as a hoax? Or when every piece of evidence, factual, concrete proof that you've uncovered is thrown away just because it doesn't fit a corporate fossil fuel agenda? I'm here to say that these lines have been breached. And although it may feel scary and foreign to speak out we must. Countless people, including youth like me, are being misled about the threats of climate change every day. It is our collective responsibility, each and every single one of us, to inform the public about the undeniable truth about climate change, so that my generation has a chance at a safe climate future. It is our responsibility to debunk the belief that oil pipelines are a necessity. It is our responsibility to defend scientific integrity. It is our responsibility to hold our government accountable in prioritizing climate justice above corporate interest. And it is our responsibility to never let our lines be crossed without a fight. This isn't something that you can hold off until tomorrow or do the night before. This is an issue of now.
Thank you to all of our speakers. Thank you to everyone for coming out. We're going to close with a few final words. Brant from Climate Truth.
I just wanted to thank everybody one more time. Again, climatetruth.org put this together today, together with the Natural History Museum, to show that when we act collectively, we are strong. And so visit us online, climatetruth.org, where you can sign up. If you like what you heard today, you can participate in the future. If you didn't like what you heard today, give us a call, and we'll work it out. Thank you to all of the scientists that participated, all of our speakers today, all of you that came here. Take what you feel now back into that building with you. Tell your friends, bring them out into the street, and let's make some changes. And with that, I'll give it back to Becca to wrap up.
Thank you. And if you'd like to learn more about us, thenaturalhistorymuseum.org. I just want to close by saying this isn't just about climate science. It's about the fate of evidence-based policies. It's about solidarity for communities that are hit hardest by climate impacts and fossil fuels. And it's about taking a moral stand against the war on science. So I thought maybe we could close with a couple of chants. Water is life.
Water is life.
Water is life.
Water is life.
Protect our communities.
Protect our communities.
Stand up for science.
Stand up for science.
Stand up for science.
Stand up for science.
Out of the labs and into the streets.
Out of the